welcome everyone to this Nymbl webinar. Thank you all for joining. Glad to see some of our clients and new guests joining today. We're really excited to talk with you about AppGen and vibe coding and showcase some actual outputs from these new technologies, these new exciting technologies. And we'll be going through a bit of our agenda in a moment. As we get through this process, feel free to ask questions in the chat. One notable thing is that we are doing a pre-record of this several hours ago, just to ensure that we have plenty of time for Q&A towards the end. Anything you want to see live as part of the demo, feel free to plop into the chat, and we can kind of get the best of both worlds of showing a fairly tight recording here, and then answer questions as they come up and interact with you towards the end of the call. By ways of introduction, I'm Martin Mason, the CEO and co-founder of Nymbl. Joined with me today is Chris McDonald, who leads our solution consulting practice, and a lot of that means this clarity of requirements and helping our customers get started and go through with their innovation with AI. We are going to be giving a bit of an overview and our take of the market, our observations to date on how AppGen is working across all different size companies, whether it's large enterprise, startups, mid-size, and how our approach of learn, build, grow, the depth and detail behind that, some of our learnings and best practices, we'll go through that. We'll show a live prototype towards the end here, where you're going to be able to see the results of our approach and interact with it. And we're going to showcase Claude in this case as far as that technology. And then, as I mentioned, as questions come up, post them in the chat, and then we'll do question Q&A towards the end. So for those of you that do not know who Nymbl is, we are a Boston-based software consulting company. We came up through data quality, data migration. And as we were doing that for a while, we realized the need of applications, especially custom applications that sit on top of core systems. That ended up being the best known technology category of low code. And you might recognize some of these companies: Mendix, Retool, Jitterbit, App Builder, and all those companies were enabling either our business counterparts, like technology teams, to build custom apps faster to solve some of the needs that you don't get from your off-the-shelf software. That pattern holds true now with AI. So naturally, using AI to develop applications is where the world is going. That's why we're going to be talking about today more deeply, but also having AI be incorporated into your workflows to assist with your data decisions. That's a lot of patterns that we're seeing within the types of apps that we're building. So as far as the first thing is, what is AppGen? We think of AppGen as the professional version of vibe coding. And we'll talk about where you would use vibe coding versus moving into an AppGen mindset. But when we reference AppGen, it's that AI-assisted development flow to create software. AppGen is effectively the evolution of low code. So low code, there was over 40 low code vendors at one point, and in the no code market, there are up to 400. And you would see these different integrated development environments where you could drag and drop and visually create applications, and that introduced an incredible amount of speed where you could develop faster, iterate faster. But the trade-off there, and just a natural trade-off, was that you were bounded by the capabilities of that platform. So if it didn't support certain functions or features, those were the limitations that you hit. Hence, that's why there are a lot of these low-code platforms, because they will kind of solve like a niche use case depending on industry or developer skill. We are seeing this sort of consolidation towards AppGen. So a lot of the top low-code technologies out there are evolving. They're still providing applications capability, but they're introducing this AppGen and chat-like experience. But the main benefit is that you're no longer constrained. There's no platform ceiling anymore. You are generating full code. So that gives you the capability of what you see with your best-in-class SaaS software. And now you have ownership of that code. And then the part that's really accelerating the introduction of AppGen in organizations is that speed. And that speed, combined with business people able to do that first version and sometimes even pick up that software development to production, is what's resulting in this explosion of demand. So where are we applying AppGen at Nymbl? We use primarily Claude Code to build these types of use cases. And we typically will fall into your more mission critical, complex use cases, something that you're either technology teams either want our assistance with, or we do full ownership of. And then outside or around these systems that we're building, our client counterparts are building their own features, modules, and applications as well. So because we're all developing now in the same methodology using AppGen, it's actually creating a lot of welcome integration and collaboration. And we are spanning the gamut as far as industries. You can see HR and recruiting, healthcare in this example, general supply chain, regulated industries. Typically, sits where you have complex integrations that you need to consider, is where we're sort of building those kind of applications. But it doesn't. Frankly, there's no limitation to the types of use cases that we're seeing. So it's everything from heavy data analytics to building a semantic layer with an AI assistant that you can chat with to get dashboard or actual information from your core systems, to complex work lists with radiologists being like served what is the most important MRI or scan to review, to complex supply chain analytics and forecasting inventory levels and so on. So part of what we're observing is that, and if you're a technology leader, this is probably going to resonate with you, is that you're seeing a lot of these tools become available. The tools have clearly changed. Now there's all these AI technologies that people are kind of tinkering with and using to solve some of their business problems. But what this is resulting in is a growth of demand. They get it working, and in some cases they're using it in their department or using it for themselves. And when they want to bring that out to the broader organization, so maybe it's an application that needs organizational wide adoption, or maybe it needs another team to be integrated, that demand is expanding, and ensuring that handover happens is what we're going to be talking about today. Part of the benefit we're also seeing is that the requirements are clearer because the business people are now iterating with their LLM a little more quickly and getting to, like, they're validating their ideas. So by the time it's presented and showcased to other stakeholders or maybe like a governance board, the ask is clear, which is a welcome which is a welcome benefit. And we're seeing that same benefit with our clients as well. Now we're getting full on prototypes and ideas, and in some cases more comprehensive requirements documents. So we believe that we can't stop this. Like, we need to embrace this and amplify it. And how do you turn that innovation, the business people that are building, to the spec, they're taking what's in their head and putting it out there visually. How do you take that into production? So where do we see like some of the limitations, or when they're trying to make that leap to an IT governed use case? It's typically starting off on the wrong tech stack. They just ask for an app to be built, but there isn't the thought process of the architecture of what is the preferred database backend. How are we going to deploy this on AWS? Which LLM are you going to be using right inside the application? Which one is secure and supported and endorsed by IT? Uh, Even just traceability, things like version control, lines of ownership. Why is this feature here? Was it just something AI suggested? Who's going to support this? Who needs to know about it? Who's going to use it? And then you have your more like infrastructure nuance. So how do you get it off your laptop if you're using Claude and into a hosted production environment that can scale, as you onboard and increase adoption? So the ones that are doing it well, and this is us in collaboration with some of our client technology teams, is that they do work out the stack to start with. So they get a good foundation. They determine how to preload, let's say, their Claude environments with, this is the preferred stack. This is what we're ultimately going to deploy to. And that way, when there's that handover, there's no surprise there, right? You're able to ship to a tech stack that's already approved. Those decisions are already known, and now you're getting into a production state where you're coming off local host, and now you're into an environment that can scale and onboard and considers all the different security implications that enterprises need to be aware of, and that's all bridging the gap from the business idea to IT governed. We also visualize this sort of from a process flow this way, right? You may start off with just a general plan. Like, how do you get your prototype started? Sometimes, business counterparts kind of skip this step and they go to vibe coding, they build that prototype, but we are finding you need some type of presentation layer or explanation of why you're building this and why it needs to be rolled out. A lot of things should just stay here because you're just working out whether this idea is something you do want to invest in. But whether you're an organization that's approving this application to go further, like, it needs to go through some type of gating process. And this is a particular relevant for enterprises. But you see the same thing with startups where you want this feature in there. But regardless, once you're ready to go, that's where you confirm or get your technology decisions. You maybe get your repo up, and then you start to do the fun iteration with the different, like, end users and stakeholder groups. And this is typically where that idea owner, maybe they're paired up with someone else or going through their different iterations. And then when they need help, they reach out and get support on whether it's configuring email notifications, converting it into a PWA for mobile experience, best practices around PDF generation and speed, things like that. And ultimately, you're getting it to be deployed through different levels, right? Whether it's staging, QA, ultimately into production. And this is where engineering or technology may come back in and do that security review and do that code quality check. So we're going to be focusing more on the left-hand side today. When you are starting here, typically it looks something like this. You get a series of ideas or old spreadsheets or old presentations or updated presentations, and then you try to form the context that you need to give to a coding agent. And sometimes we are observing that you just toss stuff to the coding agent, PDFs, images, a whole zip files, and so on. And then you end up building too much very quickly. And some of it is just features you don't need, and there's no traceability there. So our process is to take that same context and to build out a solution plan. This is like a product requirements document to at least be able to present the why behind this application, where you're tracking pain points, what your must-haves are, user groups. You can use AI to get to this step. And then below that, you have the capability of the requirements hierarchy, where this is that context engineering that you're going to pass to the coding agent, where you define the component, you define the epic, you define the story, using AI to help assist generate this, and then you're passing the epic over to the coding agent, and it's starting a development sequence that makes sense. This way, you know that you're building the right thing, that you've given enough context to it, you're using fewer tokens, you have that traceability in place. So we're going to be you're really getting into this flow today, and then as an output towards the end, you're going to see a prototype of what we've taken and being able to interact with that prototype and get to that demo ready state to then improve your overall solution plan and general direction of the application. So from an architecture point of view, you'll notice the way we think about our what we call our components or level one components is we do bucket things in these areas. So everything you want to build in software will fall into these 4 areas. Either it's an experience, maybe it's through an AI assistant, mobile application. It's a workflow where data comes in and it's more deterministic. Here's where you might leverage agents and outputs. And then you have integrations where you're connecting your core systems to drive some of that functionality in your app. The left-hand side should be thought out ahead of time, but sometimes certain modules or apps you're building might introduce a new technology requirement. But you should know your SSO, you should know your database backend of choice, you should know where you're storing your files, you should have your approved list of LLMs. This foundation is quite reusable. So with that, I'm going to hand over to Chris to get into our approach, which is the learn, build, grow model, and then I'll come back at the end and show you the actual prototype.
All right, thank you, Martin. So let's go ahead and dig into learn, build, grow, which is our repeatable approach for taking an idea to a live system. First up, we have learn. This is where we get to know the business and its core challenges, so we build the right thing and stay in step with the stakeholders. Next, we have build, which is where we create the software using both people and AI. AI lets us move at a much faster pace than before, while people in a tight feedback loop keep us aligned with stakeholders focused on the real problems. And then finally, we have grow, where we keep improving the product once it's live in production. And the focus here in grow is scaling and evolving over time so that the software grows alongside the business. For today's exercise, we're going to have a single business that's consistent throughout the entire presentation. That business is called Northwinds. They are a gourmet food wholesaler. They have a warehouse, sales team, about 100 customers. The challenge is that sales reps can't see real inventory in their current system, and there's nothing preventing them from overpromising inventory that they do not have. And the behavior we want to change is for sales reps to stop overcommitting when they enter an order into the system. And what we're going to build is a prototype with a live inventory read and a validation that blocks the order from being submitted right from the system itself. One theme we're going to keep alluding to throughout the presentation is the concept of people and AI together. There's no doubt that AI is incredibly powerful and it helps us to deliver much faster than in the past, but we always want a person in the loop making real calls and sign-offs at every important step in the process. So examples of that could be at the start, where we sit down and do interviews with the business. We ask the right questions and we're trying to figure out how things actually work and where the real problems are. This is going to be in the middle during the process where people own the approvals and key checkpoints. And then towards the end, once things are built, people are going to log in and actually check to make sure that the system is working. It feels simple and intuitive before we go into production. All right, inside learn, build, and grow, there are 5 stages. We have plan, validate, develop, enable, and launch. And each one of these stages repeats, it gets reviewed, and it needs a person to sign off. So we always have a strong feedback loop, and we're not drifting and getting off track. So first up, we're going to start with learn. Learn has 2 stages, plan and validate. Plan is where we're going to run our intake and discovery sessions. We're going to ask questions, really dig into the business, and turn what we learn into a clear and easy to explain plan. And then we have validate, which is the stage where we take that plan and play it back to you in different formats. This could be a clickable prototype, a list of requirements, or estimates and a timeline. We're going to go back and forth, iterate, and ultimately get your final sign-off before we move into the build portion of the process. All right, so probably one of the most important parts of the entire thing is our discovery and intake sessions. So we're really trying to understand the business before we build anything. Here we have just a few of the sample questions that we might ask. One thing we always try and do is we want to try and watch a process live on a call. So if we can see someone actually do the task, place an order, run a workflow, we can try and identify those gaps and root causes that are causing the issues behind the scenes. So here we're asking the Northwind's owner to walk us through a sales rep and how they take an order in the system today. And then you have the operations manager jump in and point out where everything starts to fall apart. Once we're confident we have the real challenges nailed down, we're ready to move on. One of the key outputs of those sessions is what we call our solution plan. You can think of it as a clear first draft of what we plan on building, and it's going to be refined over a few rounds of discovery. It matters because there's one thing that we know for sure, without a doubt, is that your needs are going to change over time. And because we know that, we set up the plan in a way that's able to handle those changes. Once it's validated, the plan becomes requirements, and we keep those current for the entire life cycle of the system. The plan itself is made up of a number of different pieces that allow us to work with AI and build the best solutions possible. One of those pieces is the requirements hierarchy that Martin alluded to earlier. It's made up of 5 levels. At the very top, we have the solution, followed by components, epics, user stories, and acceptance criteria. And the hierarchy is how we organize everything and clearly communicate what we plan on building. An easy way to picture the hierarchy is like a house blueprint. You have level 0, the solution, which is the entire house. Level 1, the components, are like the rooms in a house. Think big groupings of features and requirements. Then we have level 2, the epics, which are like the core functions of the room. So if you think about a kitchen, the kitchen is where you cook food, wash dishes, or a living room is where you might entertain guests. Then you have level 3, user stories. These are the specific jobs that each of the rooms needs to be able to handle. And it's where we get to the level of detail of who's performing that job, and more importantly, why, which is actually really important once we start to build. Then you have level 4, acceptance criteria. These are like the checks an inspector would need to do to make sure the house is ready to be moved into. So going into rooms, flipping the switches, making sure the electricity works, or turning on the faucets, making sure the plumbing's ready to go before people are in, living, and using the house. All right, now let's apply our Northwind's example to the house analogy. So we have level 0, the solution, the entire thing. So for Northwind, we're going to build a solution called order flow. Then you have L1, the component or the room. An example for Northwind is going to be order management, where the reps are going to be creating and maintaining their sales orders. Then we have level 2, the epics. These are the room's core functionality. So for order management, these are going to be things like entering in orders or checking live inventory. Then you have level 3, user stories, which are the specific jobs with details like who and what. So an example for our order flow solution might be, as a sales rep, I need to quickly enter in a sales order so I can accurately capture the needs of my customers. Then you have level 4, acceptance criteria, which are the checks that we'll run to make sure a user story is finished and complete, working as expected. For our scenario, an example might be if a sales rep tries to put in or submit an order for inventory we don't have, the system doesn't allow it. It blocks it right there at the order screen so that we're not promising anything that isn't there in the system. All right, so now that we know what a solution plan is and why it's important, we're going to have some fun and show you how to put one together using AI to help us out. Okay, so what we're looking at now is a tool we actually developed using AppGen that allows us to take meeting transcripts from our intake and discovery sessions, upload them, and build our first version of our solution plan. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a new solution. We're going to call it order flow. And the company is going to be Northwind. I'm going to click next. We'll click upload. and I'm going to take our meeting transcript from one of our discovery sessions. I'll click create and analyze. So what's happening now is we're using a team of AI agents to review the file we just uploaded and break down and stage each of the pieces of our solution plan that we can then go in, review, iterate, and approve. So the process usually takes about 5 to 10 minutes. So we're going to go over to one that's already been completed. So this is going to have all of these sections of the solution plan that answers the question, why are we building this? We have the context, which gives us relevant background information, right? So this client is a wholesale distributor of specialty gourmet food products. We have the problem that outlines the core problem that we're trying to solve. The business runs order taking and stock tracking through a single user 15-year-old Microsoft Access file with no live stock visibility. We have the opportunity. So why Nymbl or why now? It just so happens that Northwinds is undergoing a company-wide digital modernization initiative to update old tools. So it's a perfect opportunity for us to come in and revamp their order management and inventory system. You have pain points. So what are the specific pain points that the business is experiencing based on the old outdated system? And then last here, you have success metrics. So for the scenario that we've been talking about throughout the entire presentation, we're going to focus in on this success metric, which is we want to eliminate overselling by preventing reps from promising more stock than exists. So we would take some kind of baseline before we built out the solution. So what's happened in the last 6 months to a year? How many occurrences have the sales team overpromised on inventory that they don't have because they can't see live inventory in the system? And then after we've gone live and we're in production, maybe a month, 3 months, 6 months in, we should start to see this metric plummet, right, and go down hopefully to zero. Some other sections we have are who are we building the solution for? So we have our user groups. We can take a look at all the different groups of individuals who are going to be using the application. So we have bookkeepers, shipping carrier integration users, sales managers, sales rep, warehouse staff. We'll be able to see kind of a high-level summary of what that user group entails, their needs, their challenges, and benefits that they're going to get from this solution. So we really understand the who and their pain points. That allows us to build a much better solution that's going to solve those problems. We have user stories. And then if we go down to the what section, we can see our requirements hierarchy all laid out. So we have level one, these are our components, right? So think rooms in the house. And then you have your level twos, so the core functions. And if I click on one of these epics in our level two, customer selection and order entry, I can see all of the level three user stories and level four acceptance criteria, right? So these are like the inspection checks that we're going to do to make sure that this user story is complete before we ship it and deploy it. So there's many more sections here, but what we really care about is the output. So what are we actually going to use? And I'm going to hand back to Martin so that he can start to do his prototyping exercise. So if I click on solution plan, we're going to have one-stop shop for all of this information you can have a PDF format, HTML. Just so happens that with AI, Markdown files are the preferred method. So I can go ahead and download that Markdown file, hand it over to Martin, and we'll pass it to him to go through how we start to map out our prototyping exercise.
All right, thanks, Chris. So Chris did the hard part of getting the output or that solution plan generated for me to start the prototype. So let's get into the prototyping stage here. Whenever you're getting into, let's say, that first showcase of any type of application, you do want to have a good plan of what the problem statement is and what you're going to be solving. And you might do multiple of these in one session, but over time, this is how the iteration will happen with your business groups. And part of what we're going to be showing today is taking that larger level context and uploading it into one of these vibe coding tools. And in this case, what we're going to be using is Claude Design. So as I mentioned, we use a lot of Claude Code. Claude Design is sort of that precursor, kind of that vibe coding area of building that initial prototype. So it's a little bit more lightweight. You're not having to set up a repo, or a backend or anything, but you're able to really articulate the vision or ideas quite well. And there's other tools out there that many of you have likely used. And a lot of these tools are also offering, top to bottom capabilities to build a full on application. So in our flow, we start with Claude Design, and then we ultimately do hand that over to Claude Code, and then we build a full stack app. So I'm going to show you taking that MD file and getting it into that initial prototype. So back on the page that Chris was on, this is where you see this summary level presentation of that markdown. And all that information has now been served in this solution plan. So I can download this markdown file. So let's take a look at the formatting here, because it is notable to see like what AI is consuming efficiently. So this is what it looks like. It's still human readable. To get a better version of this is I'm just presenting this in a note-taking tool, but you can see it's got the epic, it's got the user stories in here, it's got some of the acceptance criteria as well. So it's all in that formatting. This in the beginning has some more macro level context, like what are the pain points, what are the must-haves, and so on. So I'm going to upload this markdown file over into Claude Design. So let's get that going here. So let me actually start up a new one. Um, and I'll just, so this, I'm in Claude Design here. I'm just going to upload that markdown here. Okay. And then one other notable thing is that I can just say, build me what's in this markdown, but we do want to introduce this best practices of prompting the prompt. So I did ask Claude in my Claude chat to take this markdown and say, how do I best instruct Claude Design to build a higher quality prototype? And this gives you a higher output. It improves that first cut, and it creates a bit more efficiency for, in this case, the prototyping agent. So I'm going to paste this in here. You do want to select your template. Actually, it will figure it out if you forget to do that step. And then I'm going to use the default model here. So I'm going to send this in here. Now, this will take about maybe 10, 15 minutes. It also depends on what model you use and the level of effort you assigned it. So rather than us come and wait, we do have a pre-built one that is very similar to what I had showed earlier. So let's take a look at that one. So I'm going to back out here. We can come back to that as well. So let me launch this one here. Okay, so same exact prompt, same exact MD file. Let's make this a little bit bigger here. And I've done no subsequent prompts, and I can do that just to showcase. But so remember, one of the core business problems was that stock, like that lack of visibility to inventory being available. So in order to make an order, you need customers. So you should be able to search by customer. So I can say I'm on the phone with this client here, and then I can drill into this client. I can start an order. So it doesn't even ask me things like order number. It just says put the SKUs in the order. And then I see this real-time view of what's in stock, and you can actually see it's suggesting this sort of notification feed of who's ordering things. And maybe I might iterate on that and say, you know what, that should just be on the left or somewhere else. But I'm going to add some stock in here or some SKUs, and then let's pick one that's low. So if I try to add this multiple times, you'll see that this is what it came up with as a way to prevent over ordering. And then let's say I try to reserve this, it won't let me, right? So it puts a blocker in this place. So then I have to adjust the quantity down, and then that message goes away. At this point, because of the context that was provided, it's also iterated on other features. So I can click on this little list thing and say, you know what, I'm going to give them a discount. Oh, that's too much. And then here, in this prototype, what's different from a design is I am actually adding data and it's capturing that data inside the prototype, which is a better demo or showcase experience than just a straight like design, right? Where you have a more linear flow. It's actually interactive. And a lot of the apps that we build in the enterprise are very data intensive. So the data flow is very important. The other piece of it is understanding security. So here, our best practice is to ensure, like as you log in as a separate role, that you represent the pages differently. So I can impersonate this person here, and just start to see, okay, what do they see in their month-end report or reorder report, and this is the only thing they care about. And this is also, helpful if you're showcasing this to the business to navigate between the different stakeholders that are in the room. Uh, so let's do a quick prompt of a change here. So you do, as far as context efficiency, you do want to open up a new chat, and then let's say all you would say, this is the interactive development. So remove the bottom left profile indicator. I say move and shift that to the top right. Okay. So then that will turn for a bit, and that may take, maybe 30 seconds to do. And that's essentially going to move this hopefully to the top right here. And that's the type of tweaking. That's a fairly simple example, but that's the type of tweaking that you might do as you iterate here. So you can see it drop there, and that was rather fast because it was kind of a light feature, but more complex epics could take some time. And here, right away, I might want to resolve this kind of redundancy. But wanted to show just what a chat looks like in this case. When we develop, when we actually get into the development piece of it, we do at the Epic level. All right, so that's the prototype stage there. If once I'm ready, and let's say I'm happy with this prototype, how you get it over to Claude is you do the share feature. And then you literally just send this exact prototype to Claude Code. And at that point, that's where, if I come back to this presentation, is where you would pick up to, I don't know why it's here, but you would pick up and run with that build gate and engineering ready. So you go from that prototype and say, all right, I'm ready to start. And then when you're in Claude Code, that's when you have to work out, okay, what repo is this going to live in, and work on some of that engineering onboarding. So if you want to learn more about that, we have a whole section there, and that's in our build, in our build phase. And then the stage there is develop, and you can see all the steps, everything from requirements, which we showed that, then spec-driven development, which is the instructions wrapped around the requirement, and then the plan, which is what the coding agent produces, the code itself, and then the review. So ultimately, you get to a point of deployment where you're having that in a sandbox. So this is what we're going to be covering in a future webinar, but near term, it will be in our hackathon, which is in Boston. So everyone on this call is invited to that. So if you want to sign up, you just click, you can scan it here. I'll also, you can post the link in the chat. We have about 6 slots left for the September one. We are planning a November one, depending on availability and interest. So it's going to be about a 25-person hackathon. So we're very excited about that. So if you want to see a bit of this again, but then actually get into build, we'll spend a day together. 23rd is when you arrive. The 24th would be the actual day, and it'll be a lot of fun. So thank you everyone for this. So we're going to shift to the actual Q&A, and then we'll go with the live session now.